On behalf of the Simpson family, I want to thank every one of you for being here today. Ann, Bill, Colin, and Sue made the decision that this gathering, with all of you who loved Al so much, on the grounds of his alma mater, he cherished, is exactly where Al would want us all to come together at this time. The Simpson family felt there is only one song that could truly launch a celebration of Al's life. So please join in full voice with Western Thunder. As you know, Al is joining us from heaven with Ragtime Cowboy Joe. There is no doubt Al is smiling down. When our founding fathers envisioned the creation of our great nation, you have to know that in their minds, our country would always have leaders like Al and Kate Simpson, the best of the best. And as we celebrate Al today, let's please rise again and honor our nation and one of our nation's treasured leaders in the singing of the Star-Spangled Banner, led today by the UW Happy Jack Singers.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming? Whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we marched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
You can be seated. And now let me ask a close friend of the Simpson family, the Reverend Alden Doyle, Director of Campus Ministries with the Episcopal Church of Wyoming, to lead us in prayer.
As we honor Senator Al Simpson, a man of deep faith, I invite you to join me in prayer to the God that Al and I both share. Let us pray. O God of grace and glory, we remember before you this day our brother Al. We want to thank you for giving him to us, to know and to love as a companion on our earthly pilgrimage. God, you speak truth in every age through many voices, and Senator Simpson was one of them. For he taught not politics, but morals. He fostered not partisanship, but the recognition of true merit wherever found. May we carry on his legacy. Loving God, in your boundless compassion, console us who mourn. Give us faith to see in death the gateway to eternal life, so that with quiet confidence we may continue on our earthly journeys, trusting in the victory of your resurrection over sin and death, and holding fast to the promise that one day we will be reunited with all of those who have gone before us in your eternal embrace. And yet, as we hold on to hope, our hearts still wrestle with so many emotions. And it's hard, God. But we are not alone. We have each other, this community that I'll cherish so dearly. And we have you, God, and your word, on which we can always lean. And so I invite you now, if you feel so led, to join me in your word, the prayer you taught us to say. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not to temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
This is an honor of a lifetime for me, to be asked by Ann to guide our celebration event today. I'm Ben Blaylock, and I've been privileged to work closely with Al and Ann now for almost 3 decades. But the ultimate gift of my life has not been working with Al and Ann. It has been knowing Al and Ann as 2 of my closest friends. For years, our friendship has allowed me the gift of saying to Al and Ann on countless occasions, I love you. We closed every conversation, in person and by phone, with the words of affection. And today, Ann, I look in your eyes and begin our celebration of your beloved husband, and I say, I love you guys. You and Al are 2 of God's greatest gifts in my life. Al's national and international stature opened doors for UW that could likely never have been opened. His influence made things happen. His presence with major donors helped encourage them to give generously to UW at levels the university had never experienced before Al's involvement with the Distinction Campaign under UW president then at the time, Phil Dubois. I was gifted a front row seat as Al and Ann brought their closest friends to visit the UW campus. George H.W. Bush, Sandra Day O'Connor, Mikhail Gorbachev, James Baker. The list goes on and on. They came to Laramie, to the UW campus, because Al and Ann invited them. Al and Ann wanted to show off their school, and they wanted the world to know what an amazing university the state of Wyoming has. Every one of us here knew this day would come. But we all somehow believed that Al Simpson would live forever. We all wanted Al to make us laugh. We arrived at every event where he would be speaking with silly smiles on our faces, ready to laugh, even though nothing funny had been said yet. We all wanted Al to help us make sense of all the national and world issues that confused us and sometimes made us mad. We all wanted Al to call us by our names And then to hear him ask about members of our families, he also knew by name. For 25 plus years as president of the University of Wyoming Foundation, I introduced Al on countless occasions. Al was our go-to draw for any event. We could always bring together a crowd when the invitation said that retired Wyoming U.S. Senator Alan K. Simpson would be speaking. And now, here we are again today because Al brought us together. As we celebrate the beloved Al Simpson, we also honor his amazing wife, Ann. Al's ultimate achievement, overmarrying for 70 years. His partner in life, the beautiful, gracious woman who Al knew it actually was Ann who made him legitimate. I've often thought that Al was so unique that if not for Ann, who was so real, many of us might have viewed Al differently. But anyone who could so overmarry and have Ann as his bride had to somehow be for real. Ann was the one person in life who could always pull Al back into line. I look down, I see the amazing Simpson kids. Bill, Colin back here, Sue, and their spouses, Debbie, Deb, John, and their children. What a remarkable family, personally and professionally, that God created through Al and Ann. And the Simpson brothers are here. Al looking down on his beloved brother Pete, and of course the always the best Lynn, who has so often made me laugh and brighten my days, and their children who are a magical pool of artistic talents. I was privileged on countless occasions through the years to share the stage with Al and Pete, the Simpson brothers. When I arrived at UW in 1996, I was thrust into the Simpson world, all the laughs, all the humor. I came to well understand my role, set the stage for the evening, and get out of the way. Now, sometimes we had additional speakers for an event. Most were not funny. We always let them go first. Hopefully their comments would be brief. And then we would give you guys all you really wanted is lots of time to laugh your off with Al and Pete. And the evening was always a resounding success. When Ann asked me to take the stage today, I knew the assignment was impossible. We all want Al here. So I thought that today we could begin by allowing ourselves to bring Al back to the podium. Al's the reason we're all here. So allow yourselves to feel the anticipation you always felt when Al was getting ready to come and speak. Now envision his towering 6'7" presence. His slow walk as he approaches the podium. See his silly smile and his gleaming, mischievous eyes. Yes, 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 here we are, yes. Yes, as you begin to see, and we're laughing, and he hasn't even said anything yet. Yes, 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 yes. Here we are. Yes, yes. See all of you right here? Yes, yes, you come. Yes, thank you. Yes, I see some who are close to the exits. Yes, yes, we have our eye on you. Yes, yes, keeping an eye. Yes, yes, yes. Now, we all had Al's jokes memorized. And yet every time he told the same joke, we laughed again and we laughed even harder. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, remember when I weighed 250? Yes. Had hair and thought beer was food. Yes, people say, yes, Simpson, you need new jokes. No, I don't need new jokes. I just need new audiences. And of course, for those of us who introduced Al, no matter how heartfelt and perfectly worded our introductions would be, leading to standing ovations for Al as he would come to the podium, and when the applause died down, he would always respond with, yes, 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 Blaylock, yes, yes. Clever guy, yes, yes, there you are. Yes, of all the introductions I've received, that was the most recent. Al is one of life's few giants. He will live forever in our hearts and in our minds. We will tell his jokes for our lifetime, and we will laugh each time. There will never be another Al Simpson. God just made one. As we celebrate Al's life today, we have an amazing group of individuals who are here. Most of you might know them better from a distance than really know them personally. They're national state leaders, Al and Ann, they're personal friends. Bill Clinton called when the news came to him that Al was in tough times. They had a good conversation. The word came to the Bush family, and I'm told that President Bush called within minutes to talk with Al, talk with the family, and then send a beautiful letter. President Joe Biden really wanted to be here today, but the schedule ultimately would not permit. But he wrote this letter that he asked that we share. Dear Ann, Bill, Colin, and Sue, Jill and I send our heartfelt condolences as you mourn the loss of your beloved Al. We're keeping you in our prayers during this difficult time. Al was a man of enormous decency and integrity. It was my honor to serve alongside him for nearly 20 years in the United States Senate. From the moment he arrived in 1979, we immediately became good friends, and I soon came to understand that everything Al did, he did with humor and conviction. Throughout his career, he always believed in forging real relationships, working across the aisle, and proving that anything is possible when we work together. From his early days as a Boy Scout to his decades in public service, Al embodied the essence of America. And as president, I was proud to award Al the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Despite our differences, Al remained one of the most genuine men I've ever served with, one who always believed in the common good and what was best for the nation. And I know the pain of losing a spouse, though nothing I can write can fill the emptiness that you are feeling. I hope that you'll be able to find some comfort in what you will never lose, the love you and Al shared. Bill, Colin, Sue, your father's legacy will live through you and your children. May the power of his example always guide you, and may his light and his love never leave you. To everyone gathered here today, in celebration of a man who served our country with honor, it is my hope that the memory of Al will be a source of strength for each one of you, and that you will find purpose in living lives worthy of him. Though it may take seasons, I promise you that the day will come when the memory of Al will bring a smile to your lips before a tear to your eye. My prayer to you for this day is that it will come sooner than later. May God bless Al Simpson. With sympathy, Joe. And now let me bring to the podium the president of the University of Wyoming, Ed Seidel.
Well, good morning, everyone. Today we gather to celebrate a man who can only be described as extraordinary, never afraid to say exactly what was on his mind, with insight and candor, and sometimes in words that could make a football coach blush. And I believe we have a football coach here. I believe he called this gift lyrical profanity. He was a tireless advocate for our state as well, and for our university that he loved so dearly. Anne, Bill, Colin, Sue, all the Simpson family, what a wonderful honor for us at the University of Wyoming to be selected as the location for Al's celebration of life. We are humbled, and we hope that your alma mater does you and Al proud today. Governors Gordon, Sullivan, and Meade, Senators Lummis and Barrasso, Congresswoman Hageman, and all the many honored guests and family friends of Al Simpson, welcome to the University of Wyoming. Senator Alan K. Simpson, a statesman, a cowboy, straight shooter, and above all, a proud son of Wyoming and of the University of Wyoming as well. Al often said that this university shaped and forged him. In return, he shaped and forged this university. A member of ASUW, a two-sport letterman, law school graduate, later a teacher, a fundraiser, and a namesake of more than one program at the university, Al Simpson's fingerprints are everywhere on this campus, just as his spirit will be forever. Al's love for the university was unconditional. It was a central part of his life, and boy, did the university love him back. As I look out among our guests, I see former presidents, Terry Rourke, Phil Dubois, and others like Tom Buchanan, who couldn't be here today, who, along with you, Ben, built many programs and buildings at this university, and you've made history together. From elevating the impact of private support to new heights to championing legal education through the Alan K. Simpson Center for Clinical and Experiential Learning, Al never stopped giving back to this university that meant so much to him. And of course, the heart of campus, the Simpson Family Plaza, stands as a testament to the enduring legacy of Al and the entire Simpson family. Now, Al never took politics nor life too seriously. He had a gift for calling things as he saw them, sometimes with words that needed a little creative translation. I remember one of those weeks when my name was getting kicked around, sort of like a football at the stadium, and out of nowhere, I just got a message from Al. He knew I needed to hear something. He said, "Hang in there, you're doing great." That was it. Short, direct, just enough to remind me that whatever storm I was in, he'd been through worse, and he survived, and I would be just fine. And that was Al, a steadfast friend who lifted you up, who celebrated the good times with you, and stood by you through the hard ones. As I was pondering last night's beautiful event and what Al meant to me, it dawned on me that he had become a father figure to me, and that he welcomed me as family, and what an honor that is. And I know he did that for so many of you as well. Now, near the end, just a few weeks ago, I spoke with Al on the phone. His voice was barely a whisper. I could hardly make out the words. But Pete was there, and after a brief pause, he did that creative translation. Al just said, "Oh, shit." I couldn't help but laugh, and I told Al that he's clearly still in very fine form. Even in his final days, he held on to that irreverence, that sharp humor, that knack for cutting through the nonsense, and above all, that remarkable ability to inspire. A fighter, a leader, a devoted friend and family man, he was an unstoppable force of nature. And though his voice is quiet now, his wit, his wisdom, his unwavering love for Wyoming and this university will forever resonate in our hearts, across the state, and throughout the nation's capital. So rest easy, Al. And if there's a great debate happening in the afterlife, we know you're already in the middle of it, cutting through the nonsense and inspiring all around you. Thank you.
So Al often referred to Mark Gordon's big heart. Al was always touched by how Governor Gordon always checked on him. He was quoted saying, "Wyoming is fortunate to have a governor like Mark, who is not only smart, but compassionate." The governor of the great state of Wyoming, Mark Gordon.
Thanks, Ben. Ann, Bill, Sue, Colin, Pete, the members of this extraordinary Simpson family. Governors, legislators, congressmen, senators, all the extraordinary people here. To the people of Wyoming, what a day to remember Alan K. Simpson. And there is much to say, and evidently a lot of us are going to say it today. But with apologies to Walt Whitman, we celebrate Al Simpson. We sing Al Simpson. And it is a glorious song, all about Wyoming and Ann and family and a life well lived. It is about friendship and integrity. It's about not pulling punches, but being very supportive. It is about service and loyalty. It's about optimism for the future. In Federalist number 2, John Jay reminds us, it has until lately been a received and uncontradicted opinion that the prosperity of the people of America depends on their continuing firmly united, and the wishes, prayers, and efforts of our best and wisest citizens have been constantly directed to that object. Lest anyone wonder, Alan K. Simpson was one of our best and wisest citizens. He was stalwart in his love of his family, his country, and what this exceptional country meant for citizens young and old. He believed in Wyoming, and he never left it. He fought every day to protect its independence. He believed in this university, and I want to thank you, President Seidel, and members of this university for this opportunity to praise a great man. Go Pokes. You know, some have described Al Simpson as a moderate, and I would say poppycock. I remember his advice once in a particularly challenging time over the last few years. After telling me some of his father's frustrations as governor with his detractors, Al admonished me to say, "Stay the course, Mark. If you put the brains of those people on the edge of a razor, they would resemble BBs in the center line of a superhighway." Now, that's not the advice of somebody who's a moderate. It was a voice of courage and of conviction. When he was in the Wyoming legislature for the first time, a colleague of his reminded me that the House was almost equally divided, 31 Republicans, 30 Democrats, and 1 independent cuss from Johnson County, my county. Al rose to be Speaker pro tem by the time he ran for Senate in 1978, due not only to character, but to achievement. He was the primary sponsor of the bill to put a process to select judges by merit, not election, in our Constitution. What a novel concept. He helped to establish the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund, the Wyoming Environmental Quality Act, among many other accomplishments. And I only remember one time when I saw Al at a loss for words. My father was taking Al around my hometown of KC during his first run for the United States Senate. When they ran into a young high school student, Al, true to his nature, leaned down and said, "So, young lady, what is it you want to do with your education?" And she replied, "I want to be an undertaker." I don't think he ever missed a beat again. At law school here a few years ago, Governor Sullivan, you'll remember, Al, Chief Justice Fox, you and I participated in a mock trial prosecuting Governor Warren for his crimes in the Johnson County War, as I've mentioned, kind of a sensitive topic for me. It's a trial that never took place. There was one rule in this mock trial, and that is you couldn't divulge the future. Al played Governor Warren capably, defended by none other than the good Governor Sullivan. But the governor had met his match in the fierce prosecution of Chief Justice Fox. And at one point, Kate asked a particularly difficult question of Governor Warren sitting in the dock. It was as much as if saying, check. Al pivoted, and he said, well, you know, years from now, people will say, and Kate had to give up. We all have a lot to be grateful about when Al became United States Senator. His amendments to the Clean Air Act that turbocharged coal production here in our state and also curtailed acid rain in the East. His work with Malcolm Wallop and Dick Cheney crafting the Wyoming Wilderness Act, and so many other amazing pieces of work. He never slowed down, becoming Senate whip for both the majority and the minority, and along the way, Al showed his ability to lead others to thoughtful and constructive solutions, even after he was out of office. Take the National Commission on Fiscal Responsibility and Reform, for example. The recommendations were sensible, they were fair, and they would have made a difference if only Congress had acted on them. But he also did it with humor. Do any of you remember Gangnam Style? Indeed, today we sing to our friend, Senator, Wyoming Treasurer, and gift, Alan K. Simpson. And if I may, I want to leave you words from the poet Wendell Berry, who Anne also loved Grapel, as you know. In time, a man disappears from his lifelong fields, from the streams he has walked beside, from the woods where he sat and waited. Thinking of this, he seems to miss himself in those places as if he always had been there, watching for himself to return. But first, he must disappear with hope and thanks. Let others come. God bless Al Simpson. God bless Wyoming. God bless America.
Al greatly admired his work ethic, called him one of the most disciplined, talented, and smart politicians he had ever known. Al thought John really reflected his constituency well. Al was also very proud of John's rise to the position as being U.S. Senate Majority Whip, a title that Al once had and cherished. Wyoming U.S. Senator John Brasso.
In the 135 years that Wyoming has been a state, we've only had 22 U.S. senators. One stood head and shoulders above all the rest, literally as well as figuratively. That's Al Simpson. Case in point, when he got called back to do the Simpson Bowles Commission, we were walking into the Capitol building one day, and you know, they have metal detectors. Kay Bailey Hutchinson and I were walking with Al, and there was a security guard that had been there many years. And as you get to go around the metal detectors, and the guard pointed to Kay Bailey Hutchinson and said, "You're okay," pointed to me and said, "You're okay," saw Al and said, "Senator," and gave him a big hug. That is the larger-than-life personality that we're here to honor today. And it is with appreciation and admiration and respect that we're all here, and not just for Al, but to the entire magnificent Simpson family. But let me tell you about Al. He was a man of great courage, character, and credibility. He was the cowboy code before we had a cowboy code, living each day with courage, taking pride in his work, and doing what needs to be done. He was very proud of our history, he was confident in our values, and he took those values to Washington, and he forged there an indelible mark for our state and for the Senate. For so many years, half a century, he was our wagon master, he was our head cowboy, and he was Cowboy Joe all rolled into one. He was a warrior, he was a survivor, he was a fighter, and he was loyal. Loyal to people and loyal to the principles in which he believed. And Ben, you talk about his role with this university. You can say he was the head cheerleader. He was more than that. He was the head coach, he was the team captain, he was the starting quarterback. He did everything he could for this university. And Ann and Al traveled the world to always boast about Wyoming, and then they would bring the world back here to Wyoming, and Ben read the list. Mikhail Gorbachev was the final president of the former Soviet Union. Al brought him from Russia here to Wyoming, here to Laramie, here to this Arena-Auditorium, here to this very stage, because he wanted Gorby to know the people of Wyoming. And of course, humor was his trademark. What I know as a senator is if you're a senator and you tell a joke and this works for me, you get polite applause and a little laughter. But if you start by saying, as Al Simpson said, and you tell the exact same story, it brings down the house every time, every single time. It's what made him so effective. You know, his father enjoyed the gift of lyrical profanity, and that Al said he inherited it from his dad. Al Simpson perfected it. But it was his humor, because it made, the thing that I loved about it, and I talked about this, and Cynthia and I were on the floor of the Senate talking about him, it made you laugh, but it also made you think. And that's what made him so persuasive. And of course, he always credited Anne with all of his success. Over the years, he used to find her as classy, warm, welcoming, generous, gracious, magnificent. That woman from Grable. Married over 70 years. I remember one time he said, for Anne, that marriage must have been a religious experience. A living hell. You're a saint. We love you. We still have the Simpson law in our office. It's the Simpson policy, which means if anybody shows up from Wyoming, even if they don't have an appointment, they get to see the senator. And it happened just Wednesday when I got called out of a whip meeting because 6 8th graders showed up without an appointment from Newcastle High School. Because as Al said, it may be the only time they ever make a trip to Washington, D.C. The other thing that was so interesting are the people that he met throughout his life and the impact he had. So the day it was announced that Al had passed, and Cynthia and I were heading to the floor, the first senator to stop me to offer his condolences was at 6'8", wearing his Carhartts, John Fetterman of Pennsylvania. Who'd have thought? He said Al inspired him because Fetterman was at Harvard when Al was there as a professor. 2 days later, I was in Jordan visiting our troops. We have 150 members of our Army National Guard there. Went to see the king. He said, you know, I love Wyoming. I love Cody. Please give the Simpson family my deepest condolences. I mean, that's what this is all about. There is one single word that really defines Al Simpson, and that word is integrity. And on the back of this program, it says, if you have integrity, nothing else matters. If you don't have integrity, nothing else matters. That word was so hooked to Al Simpson that they actually, Wyoming Whiskey made a special blend of whiskey called the Integrity Blend of Whiskey. We should all have a shot tonight. They bottled it, put it in a bottle called Integrity. Al's face is on it as long as his signature and his name, and that's the way he'll always be remembered. Let me close with this. If you come to my office in Washington, you will see a picture of Al and Ronald Reagan, and they were in Cheyenne in 1982 for a political rally. You'll also see a picture of here on the university, the field house, John Kennedy, 1963. And you'll see a picture here at the University of Old Main, 1903. Teddy Roosevelt was here at the university. He was here as our keynote speaker for commencement. And when Reagan was up there, he spoke about the fact, he said the thing he loved about Wyoming and the Rocky Mountain West, he said, people here still believe the future is ours to shape. And Al Simpson shaped that future for more than half a century. John Kennedy was here as part of his conservation tour. And he said it's important that we maintain the living balance between man's actions and nature's reactions. Al Simpson maintained that balance. And Teddy Roosevelt was here. He talked about Wyoming virtues of strength and courage and undaunted and unwavering resolve. That's Al Simpson. When Teddy was leaving, they were going to ride a horse over the top, and they said, what kind of horse do you want? He said, I want a horse that is swift, spirited, and sure-footed. Sounds a lot like Al Simpson. He was our native son. He was our North Star. He was a rock star. And to the entire Simpson family, you have our deepest, deepest condolences. Thank you very much.
Simpson Bowles, Bowles Simpson. They were enlisted by President Obama to take on a task that seemed impossible: oversee a bipartisan commission to address our nation's debt. The media called them an odd couple of politics, an improbable buddy act. They developed a remarkable partnership that brought so much joy to Al's life. Al would always say, "Erskine is the numbers guy. I am the color guy." The Honorable Erskine Bowles.
I know it's hard for everybody here today. It's really hard for me. When I first met Al Simpson, Bill Clinton sent me over to see him in the 1990s. And I swear to goodness, I thought I had met my crazy uncle in the attic. Where is this guy coming from? And Clinton sending me here to get advice? But over the many years, we had a chance to get to know each other and work together. I grew to love him like family, with every ounce I have within him. I know we all came here today to honor the life and the legacy and the legend of our friend and colleague, Al Simpson. But I came to remember the pure joy that he brought to my life and to relish that cowboy wit and wisdom that he brought to every single thing he did. Al was many things. He was an esteemed politician, a U.S. senator, a public servant in the finest sense of that word, a true friend, a friend you could count on in good times and bad, and a man who never, ever shied away from speaking his mind. I so much, Al, want to tell the story about the guy who asked you at some meeting we were at, had you ever thought about being politically correct? And Al said, no, never thought about being politically correct. He said, for me, being politically correct would be like picking up a turd by the clean end. Ann came to all of our speeches. She gave us an F that day. She graded us. I will also never forget when Crandall and I, my wife and I, were out here. We were at the Bobcat Ranch over there in Cody, and we were having some fun. We probably had a few pops. And I walked in by this picture in the wall, and there was a picture of Al. Al had his arm around Ann, and the arm around Ann's twin sister. And I said, Al, you never told me that Ann was a twin. He said, no, I guess I didn't, sorry. I said, well, how'd you tell them apart? He said, I never thought that was my responsibility. He could do that all the time, right off the cuff. I love that man's sense of humor. But to me, what I loved most was what the senator just mentioned, his integrity. This giant of a man lived his integrity. He was a man who you knew you could trust to his very core. Al said to every group exactly what John said he said. It is on the back of your program. He said, If you have integrity, nothing else matters. If you don't have integrity, nothing else matters. To Al, trust was everything. Trust was the coin of a realm. He was indeed a man you wanted to have on your side. I traveled the country with Al for years. It changed me, I'm telling you. I don't think I ever made anybody laugh in my whole life before I stole Al's jokes. We spoke to people of all stripes. One day, Al and I were having our picture taken together with his group of people from the audience. And Al, who was always looking out for me, turned to me and whispered, "Erskine, this time, put your arm around the people we're getting our picture taken with. That way they can't clip you out of a picture." Al was a man who always was true to himself. Whether you were for him or against him, he was never afraid to be straightforward. And he didn't believe in sugarcoating anything. In his answers to questions, you could actually feel his authenticity. He was principled to his very core, but he did believe in compromise. I once heard him tell an audience, if you can't compromise without compromising your principles, you better never be a lawyer. You better never go into politics. And for God's sake, you better never get married. I stole them all. Over the years, Al and I talked to literally hundreds of thousands of people about the importance of fiscal responsibility and the dangers of our generational, bipartisan fiscal irresponsibility. We talked to the far right and to the far left, and we told them the exact same thing. In this dog and pony show that Al and I were putting on, he always made me get up first. And I'd go up there and tell a few facts, throw out a few numbers, and I bored their ass off. I did exactly what Al wanted me to do. And then he would get up there, and I swear to goodness, he would tell a couple of jokes. He would ad-lib a few of those stories. And I swear the people loved it. I went home and talked to my wife. I said, it's mostly just dribble. I said, I don't get it. But they got it. I swear they got it. I just didn't get it at first. But in time I did. Al disarmed our audience with his humor and humanity. They saw in him a leader who cared and cared deeply about them and our country. Later that night, usually when we were at some local watering hole, have a few pops, we had that in common. Al would give me a little of that cowboy wisdom. He told me, Erskine, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. You can't say it better. So much of Washington today is Simonized, sanitized, airbrushed, with all the rough edges burnished away, but not with my friend and mentor, Al Simpson. He wanted people to look into his heart and see he really cared and cared deeply People who listened to us and we to them could actually feel what I felt in Al, that he was real. He was the real deal, and that they could trust him. And as Al told me over and over again, trust is the coin of a realm. Trust is everything. Throughout our time together, Al showed me that the heart of a good public servant is rooted in humility. He often joked that those who travel the high road of humility are not troubled by heavy traffic in Washington, D.C. I came to understand that Al's ability to connect with people, no matter their political affiliation or background, was a testament to his character, to the strength of his character. He was honest, kind, so thoughtful, and he was always willing to lend a hand, a smile, or a good joke when needed. As I traveled around the country with this cowboy, to my amazement, I learned that this guy was actually a Renaissance man. Who would have thunk it? Everywhere we went, Al would drag me along to visit some museum. A few months ago, I called him when I was in LA. He asked me if I had visited the Guggenheim. I told him no. He said, but Erskine, you loved visiting those museums we went to together. And I said, Al, I never really liked visiting those museums. I just loved being with you. I loved like family this man who took me under his wing, who taught me so much, who trusted me, who smothered me with his humor, with that cowboy wit and wisdom. And I will miss him. I will miss him greatly. But I promise you, this wonderful friend, this strong leader, this Renaissance man will have a special place in my heart forever and ever. Thank you.
Al was a strong advocate for him to be named ambassador to Ireland. He is a noted attorney and a beloved leader of our state. Al is quoted as saying he is a real Westerner, a great Wyoming governor, a straight shooter, and a loyal friend. The 29th governor of the great state of Wyoming, Mike Sullivan.
Governor, Senator, Congresswoman, President, distinguished guests. Isn't this fun? I just had to do that because it's like Al's profanity, it's lyrical. Let me start by saying on behalf of us and all of us, we wish to thank Ann and the Simpson family for sharing this time with us and giving all of us an opportunity to share our views, which are pretty much the same, about Al Simpson. But more than that, thank you for sharing Al Simpson during his lifetime as a public servant and a great citizen, because that's an unappreciated downside to the kind of life that Al lived. You had to share him with so many people, and we thank you for that. goes without saying, and it actually goes without saying, that I worried about this talk, as my colleagues here surely did. How are we going to make this fresh? What are we going to say? We're going to step all over each other's comments. And Ben took care of that in his talk. So I had shortened this up from 3 pages to 6 pages, and now I think I could throw it back to 3 pages. But we'll try to get through there. Al was a consummate politician and human being. And that was brought about by the fact he was a listener, and he loved people. Now, it occurred to me, it happened to me 5 or 6 times while we've been preparing for these events, that I'd say something about Al, and the response would be, I didn't know Al really well, but I met him in an airport one day. Now, that's 5 times, and it's probably happened among all of you as well. And inevitably, they said, and we had a nice conversation, and when I left, I thought he was his best friend, my best friend. I thought I was his best friend. And he loved people, young and old. But he combined his talent as a listener as a storyteller. He was the consummate storyteller. You've heard that already, and you've heard it before. And Ben stepped on this one, but I'm going to change it a little. I always referred to it as a threefer. When you got Al, you got a threefer. Because when he'd stand up, point his gnarled finger out there, you knew he was going to tell a joke. And so you'd start laughing. At least those of us who had heard him enough. And then he'd start telling the joke. And he'd get far enough along that you knew what the joke was going to be, so you'd start laughing again. And then he'd get to the punchline. How far am I from the ocean? Is the coast clear? And you'd laugh and laugh and laugh because he was such a good storyteller, not because you hadn't heard the joke before. He could make you laugh coming and going. In August, we dedicated the Simpson Center for Clinical and Experiential Living, right over here. And many of you were there. And Al was in a wheelchair, and it took great courage for him to be in Laramie for that event. But he wasn't satisfied with that. He insisted upon standing and giving his talk. And he had 12 pages, about like me, but his hands were shaky, and he couldn't get to all the pages. So we were all watching, and he was having trouble. So a couple of them fell on the floor. But it didn't slow him down. He'd see something that he recognized he was going to say, oh yeah, now I want to do that. And I asked Colin to send me a copy of his speech because we only heard about half of it. And Colin did. Now you can't see this clearly, but this is the first page. It had been marked up. So he could have read it. Nobody else could have, and he did it. But I wanted just to pull a couple of things out of it that I'm not sure I heard, but I thought worth repeating. He said, I'm going to share some life lessons. And he said, some advice. And he said, actually, advice from the lips of a curmudgeon, which is defined as anyone who hates hypocrisy and pretense, and who has the temerity to say so. Anyone with the habit of pointing out unpleasant facts in an engaging and humorous manner. Could that be me? Never fail to remember the worth of humor in life and in politics. Our mother said that humor is the universal solvent against the abrasive elements of life. And for me, it was my sword and my shield, not the harsh humor of making fun of others, but the humor that makes people share a big belly laugh. That's the best kind. And it was good for me to remember that life is absurd in the most positive sense of the word. Why even try to sort it all out? It just ain't worth it. A great phrase is, the past is history, the future is a mystery, the gift is now, and that's why they call it the present. He then went on to say, and this is reflective of where we are today and how much this university meant to Al, and what a great, wonderful relationship and interconnection there was. He said, I'm pretty good at hiding my emotions, and humor helps me do that. But I can tell you, of all of the things that happened to me in my life, military awards, legislative successes, an honorary doctorate from UW, distinguished alum recognition from this fine university, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And to all of you assembled here, I can honestly say to you that all the honors that have come my way from Alibi Al in Cody High School, this is the most moving event of my lifetime. Not only have you touched my heart, you have touched my soul. God bless you all. And that was the dedication of the building in his name. He loved it, and he made sure he let us know it, and he loved this university. Now, I tried to figure out how this icon, this legend came about. What made him so special? And I'm probably stepping on insider things here, but it occurred to me that mostly it was family. And Millward, his father, certainly taught him integrity, political judgment, common sense, and humor. Because Millward was fond of telling jokes on himself, which Hal picked up riding a white stallion in the Frontier Days parade. That's where I stopped. His mother, Lorna, instilled values and good sense, as we've already heard, such as hatred corrodes the vessel in which it is carried. And she provided unconditional love, no doubt. Pete? Hell, I don't know what Pete provided. He provided Big Brother's guidance and keeping Al competitive and humble, as older brothers are prone to do. His children and grandchildren carried forward the family's unconditional love and joy, and we saw that during these 2 weeks, and we see it here today. And I think it was summed up last night when, after hearing from a couple of three of those young people, somebody said, it's clear they're thoroughbreds. But with all that help and support and unconditional love, he could still have failed, except for the love, impact, and influence of Anne. Over 70 years of marriage, who, among other things, could readily communicate instructions and strong suggestions with a subtle raise of the eyebrow or a simple hand motion across her neck. And as Ben said, you know, if it hadn't been for Ann, we'd have probably called him something else. And I'm sitting there next to Matt, and it suddenly occurred to me, we'd have called him a crazy son of a bitch. Finally, I ran across a short poem, very short poem, written by a Bengali poet, Rabindranath. Academics, you can help me. Thakur, Nobel Prize winner in 1913 for literature, who captured Al's life, his philosophy in a short poem. I slept and dreamed that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted, and behold, service was joy. God gave Al Simpson great support, talents. May God bless him for having used them with love, integrity, dignity, and joy. Thank you.
The bond that Phil and Lisa Dubois share with Al and Ann ignited a visionary era for the University of Wyoming as a new millennium dawned. Al often spoke of the new day for UW when Phil and Lisa arrived. Very specifically, he made reference to the class, the influence, the eloquence that Phil and Lisa brought to UW as they hosted countless UW alumni, Wyoming leaders, and national luminaries in their home. Former UW President, Phil Dubois.
And members of the Simpson family, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. There was a rumor going around in early 2005 that I was being considered for the position of chancellor at University of North Carolina at Charlotte, where I had been the provost. And I was concerned about that because it was going to break. So I ran Al down at the foundation house to tell him before it became public. We cried together. It was hard to leave, largely because of Al. And I'd learned so much from him. I'd learned you could repeat any joke. You can steal any joke. You can say you overmarried endlessly, which I did, and it meant so much to us. When Lisa and I left to go to Charlotte, we didn't come back. And it was only this past August, as was referenced by Mike, that we came back to Laramie for the dedication of the Alan K. Simpson Center for Clinical and Experiential Learning at the law school. He was so typically Al on that occasion. He reminded us that the Simpson Center was the only building on this campus named after a C student. That he ranked 18th in his law school class out of 18. And how many times have you heard that he didn't graduate cum laude, but thank the laude? He also reminded us of the great law school review article, the law review article that he had authored, the role of the decedent in estate planning. We first met Al and Ann after we arrived on this campus in 1997 as the 22nd president and first lady. My first day on the job was April 1st, and I should have known better. Al was fond of telling the story about how the Dubois shook up things by coming to a state which already had a town named Dubois. And it seemed that a guy was wandering through that part of Wyoming, western Wyoming, and he was confused. Was the town pronounced Dubois or Dubois? He was clearly troubled by all this, so he dropped into a place and he said to the woman there, "What is it called? What do they call this place? And please say it very slowly." So she did. Burger King. In 1999, we decided we were ready to run a fundraising campaign, a major one. But Ben and I wanted to find just the right chair. We didn't want a figurehead. We wanted somebody who could get his hands dirty and actually go make ass of major donors. Now, with all respect to the many fine people on the stage and in the audience, we only had one choice. We met Al in the conference room of the Holiday Inn in Cody. And to our great relief, because we had no second choice, Al said yes. But he had a condition, that Ben and I would stay at the university until the campaign goal was accomplished. And we would not seek or accept any employment offers from any other place or university. We shook on it. And as you know, in Wyoming, that means it's a done deal. We entered the silent phase of our campaign with a goal of raising $100 million. But with Al as our chair, we were able to convince the legislature and Governor Geringer in early 2001 to allocate $30 million to match major gifts of over $50,000. By the fall of 2002, we had raised over $78 million, not counting the state match. And at that point, we went public with our campaign, and Al arranged for Vice President Cheney to be as our headline guest at a black tie campaign dinner, a gala with over 1,000 guests in the field house, and Lisa had planned it all. Now, of course, with the sitting vice president in the room, Al could not resist having some fun. He told the story of a magazine writer who was writing a feature article about the vice president, and he had traveled to visit the vice president at his place in Jackson. Dick Cheney was out watering the flowers, had a little dog running around. So the writer wanted to know how to properly pronounce the vice president's name. Was it Cheney or Genie? Well, yes, Dick said, it's Cheney. And the writer said, so what kind of dog is that? Dick said, well, him? He's a bagel. After the gala, we took Al on the road to a major city almost every month. We went to about a dozen of them, and he was the show. We used up the $30 million in matching funds and went back to the legislature and the governor and got another $18 million. And as a result, we passed our campaign goal by the end of November 2004. When the campaign ended at the end of June 2005, we had generated $204 million, twice the original goal. And that would not have happened without Al. And Al and I remained close even after Lisa and I returned to Charlotte in the summer of 2005. In fact, Al spoke at my formal installation as chancellor. And of course, we dressed Al like we did everybody in the platform party in the formal academic regalia with a doctoral hood and a robe. And I think it's fair to say that Al was uncomfortable with the pomp and circumstance, especially with all the distinguished professors right there. He said he felt like a jackass at the Kentucky Derby. He was very good that occasion because he stayed within his time limit, and he was always sensitive about this. As president, I would never let anything run more than 45 minutes, and that's going to also, that's a rule I held to, and he did too. And he was reminded of a 1998 event at the university. Every year we would do a Hall of Fame, athletic Hall of Fame dinner, and it was hosted by Al and Pete. One year, it was 1998, I think, one of the honorees was Joe Mastrogiovanna, who in the 1950s was the first passing quarterback for the University of Wyoming. And he was very honored. He was an old New Jersey voice, spoke in a very thick New Jersey accent, and he was just so proud. He went on for 5 minutes. He went on for 10 minutes. He went on for 20 minutes. He went on for 30 minutes, and his wife is sitting there going, finally, Al and Pete come out on stage. They throw a white handkerchief at him, and Al says, 15 yards for delay of game. Al and I stayed in touch over the years. I sent him occasional updates about our work in Charlotte, and I always received back a single-spaced, full-page letter typed on his U.S. Senator stationery. I treasured receiving those letters, and I kept every one of them. I think probably it was Erskine, I think, who talked about the high road of humility in Washington, D.C., and that they're not bothered by heavy traffic. Well, Al was on that road. In fact, he laid the asphalt, he painted the lines, and he planted the wildflowers. There were not many people on the road with him, but the entire country will never forget that tall, humble leader who inspired us with his wisdom and charmed us with his wit. Thank you.
The depth of family friendships in Wyoming is often remarkable. Governor Meade has noted that the ties of the Simpson and the Meade families go back 100 years. Al was asked by the Meade family to give a eulogy for Cliff Hanson's service. And as Al spoke about his dear friend, he made reference to Cliff's grandson, Matt. And he said, "The apple did not fall far from the tree." The 32nd governor of Wyoming, Matt Meade.
Good morning, everyone. Ben, I want you to know, called each of the speakers, or he told me he called each of the speakers and said you're limited to 5 minutes, but I think he maybe just called me. I don't know. I asked Sullivan, did he call you? No, he didn't call me. So, I don't know what that means, but anyway. First, I want to say to the Simpson family, my family feels so fortunate to have a multi-generation friendship with the Simpson family. It's been a great ride. And when you talk about Al's legacy, there's so many things to speak about. But when people met Al, and I include myself in this, you felt like he had a special relationship with you, that you were his best friend. He made you feel that way. And his legacy in so many ways is great, but I think one of the things that is the greatest is this family sitting here today. Because as you know, the Simpson family, they carry that on. The love and friendship they share with strangers, with people they've known for a long time. That's a wonderful thing. And so for my family, we join all of Wyoming in being enormously grateful to Al Simpson, recognizing the team of Al and Ann, what they've meant to our state and to our country. Al was beloved all across Wyoming, improving the lives of everyone he met, touching their lives in incredible ways. But the goodwill his tall shadow cast went well beyond Wyoming's borders. He enjoyed friendships and great appeal wherever he went. The fact is, if Al was present, he was the main attraction, regardless of the event. Now, on one occasion, I was asked to give a speech at a California university when I was in office. And I'm not sure if the invitation really was for me, or if they thought if we ask him, maybe we get Al to do an introduction of him. Because when we showed up, people were waiting in line to shake Al Simpson's hand. That's how much he was beloved wherever he went. So Al went out with me to Stanford and was going to introduce me. And you probably think, what a great idea to have Al Simpson introduce you. It's not. It's an absolutely horrible idea. To be sure, it's a great honor to be introduced by Al, but as Al was introducing me, and not surprisingly, he had a joke or two in his back pocket, I could tell, he had the crowd in the palm of his hand. And I knew exactly what everybody there was thinking, what I was thinking. Let's have Al keep talking and not have Matt talk at all. And I was with him. It was a pure case of the main attraction, followed by a warm-up band. I was like, I'm here to hold his briefcase, and I'm happy to do it. But Al, in his comments at Stanford, speaking about me, as he always is, he was so wonderful and generous and gracious. And as I think about that day, I just thought it's a source of pride that I can say I'm a friend with that Wyoming man, that Wyoming treasure. Being associated with Al opened doors for so many people in this state and beyond. I've heard so many stories about they met Al and Ann, and the next thing they know, they got this opportunity or this opportunity. He opened doors. And he opened doors for me as well. Carol and I, years ago, we were in Manhattan, and we were celebrating. So we said, where's a great steak restaurant? And we got a recommendation from at the hotel to go to this particular restaurant. So we show up, and the manager was there. It was very nice. And apparently there was something about us that he kind of got that, you all aren't around from these parts, are you? You're not from Manhattan. And I'm sure that was probably Carol, because I was blending in very well. So at one point the manager asked, where are we from? And I said, we're from Wyoming. And without hesitation, the next words out of his mouth, do you know Al Simpson? I was blown away. But I could tell from the enthusiasm in his voice that if I said I knew Al Simpson, we were going to get top-notch service at this restaurant. So with my chest puffed up with pride, I looked him right in the eye and I said, not only do I know him, I'm his son Colin. I did want to say that, but Carol was with me, so I didn't say it. But I did let him know both of us had known Al for many years, and he was a dear friend. But for people in Wyoming, that's really not a distinction, because anybody that knew Al and Ann, the Simpson family, would say the same thing. He's a dear friend. But it turns out, when I said I did know Al Simpson and that he was a dear friend, I didn't need to play Colin, which is a very good thing. Because as soon as the manager knew we knew Al, we were given a private tour of the kitchen, we were introduced to some of the staff, and we were taken down to the basement where there was a private room. And in this private room, we entered this secret door, and in the room, it was used during the days of Prohibition for some hooch drinking. And I think about that. Al was of such great fame, just knowing him opened hidden doors to speakeasies in the Big Apple. As Ben said, and we've all heard Al say this, he'd say, I don't need new jokes, I just need new audiences. But those of us who saw Al speak never really felt that way. We loved his jokes because it wasn't just the jokes that we enjoyed. It was the way Al exuded joy when telling him. His joy, his laugh, his smile, the twinkle in his eyes. He connected us. His humor blurred the lines of political parties and softened what we otherwise may have believed were irreconcilable differences. And during this time when our country seems so divided, it's a great loss to lose a guiding light like Al. Al listened to those with opposing views. He was tough and he could mix it up with anyone. You remember Harry Truman in the speech, somebody said, give him hell, Harry. He said, I don't give him hell. I tell them the truth and they think it's hell. Al was tough, but he never lost sight of the difference between disagreeing with someone and disliking someone. He was smart enough that he was usually right. He was also smart enough and had the courage to change his mind when the facts warranted it. His moral compass, his Wyoming roots, guided him to seek the truth and to act on the truth. He was a giant of a man because of the life he led in service, with love for his community, love for Wyoming, love for our country, and most importantly, love for his family and his friends. So my hope, my dear hope, as we remember Al and his incredible life, is that we can all be guided by the example he set for leadership and friendship. Al understood we can choose to separate from one another based on our particular views, or we can embrace the fact that in part the richness, the strength of our communities and our country is not because we all agree, but because with humor and goodwill, our collective views will make us better. To the Simpson family, my family sends our deepest condolences for the loss of Al. The generations will continue to pass, but our friendship, love, and admiration for the Simpson family and for Al's shining light will never fade. Thank you.
And you know that Dave and Nancy Friedenthal wanted to be here with you today. The timing of the birth of a grandchild did not allow. But I know you received their letter. I want to read a paragraph from Dave and Nancy's letter to Ann. Senator Simpson's example and influence have impacted and inspired multiple generations of Wyoming citizens, including political leaders. Nearly everyone in Wyoming has a Simpson story. Historians will chronicle his accomplishments, but they will never fully capture the place he occupies in the hearts of Wyoming people. All of you know that the artistic talents and cultural interests of the Simpson family, Al and Ann, Pete and Lynn, and their children are world-class. They're not just local talent. They are, in their various artistic worlds, exceptional. Milward Simpson made today's musical selection, and the piece is a beautiful description of a journey home in recognition of his beloved uncle. And Maggie Simpson Craybaugh, Pete and Lynn's daughter, joins with the Cheyenne Chamber Singers in No Time. He is a pioneer of social media and the preeminent expert on what innovations in technology will mean to our future. Doesn't sound much like Al Simpson, does it? Who found sending emails a challenge. Yet Steve Case has a love for politics that embraces bipartisan solutions to create jobs, especially small businesses and startups. Al loved learning from others, and Al and Steve developed a wonderful friendship. The former CEO of America Online, AOL, Steve Case.
Good afternoon, everybody. I was just reflecting on what Al might be thinking right now, as we've heard from a lot of people. I'm guessing there's three different themes. One is for sure he's flattered and grateful by the kind remarks and grateful that people are here and watching on PBS in Wyoming and watching streaming all around the world on the internet. So for sure he's appreciative. Second, he's probably a little embarrassed. He's a pretty humble guy, and listening to all these nice things is probably a little challenging, which ties in with third, which is probably a little frustrated that he has no rebuttal time. So I'm going to give him a little bit towards the end of my remarks. I first met Al over 3 decades ago, and I was a young entrepreneur trying to get America online, but we didn't become really close friends until 10 or 15 years ago when we were both part of a camp that gathered in California for a couple weeks each summer. And I was asked to speak on behalf of members of that camp, including Jim Swindon, who is here. So we'll share some of their observations, but let me start with a few of my own. I've had the good fortune of meeting a lot of interesting and successful people over the years, and Al Simpson was truly unique. He was authentic, and there was no difference between the Al you saw in public and the Al you saw in private. He had strong views, but was always open to listening to others. He never let his success or power go to his head, remembering his Wyoming roots and the importance of humility. He stayed in the game and fought the fight for issues he cared about and for a country he loved. And he did this all with great humor, in part because Al is, as we've heard and you all know, just naturally funny, but also because he recognized that humor helps diffuse tension and can help bring people together. I was reminded of this last night hearing from some of the grandkids, including some of the voicemails that he had left them. So I looked back at some of my voicemails that he left, including the last one he left just a couple of months ago. I was calling to check in on him, but listen to what he said. Steve, this is Reverend Alan K. Simpson of Cody, Wyoming, returning your call. I assume you've had some catastrophic financial disaster, and you were calling to see if I could help bail you out. I can only go in for a couple $100. So I'm calling to check on him, and he's trying to make me laugh. Speaking of laughing, one of my fellow campmates, the documentarian Ken Burns, said it well. Alan was one of a kind, and will miss his humor and humanity sorely. Even though you might have heard his jokes or his wisdom the day before, and maybe even the day before that, they had a way of becoming funnier and wiser with each successive retelling. The singer and songwriter Clint Black, who will pay tribute to Al on Monday at the service in Cody, said this: Al was a very special presence in our lives. I always tried to draft behind him to overhear whatever yarn he was spinning. And another campmate, Charlie Bond, wrote this about Al just last week. He was a lanky fella from the Cowboy State. Who'd guess the genius behind that bald pate? His words could bite like the sharpest tooth, simply by telling the unvarnished truth. If you listened, he'd give you wisdom, insight, and unending wit, telling it like it is, with no bull. For some, he had a bullseye zinger. Others simply got the middle finger. But all delivered so that it made you laugh and love him all the more for his comic craft. His humor could be sardonic, ironic, or dry, and so hilarious it would make you cry. And though he seemed tough as old rawhide, when he tipped his hand, you could see inside the most magnanimous heart and poet's soul, and that was when the real truth was told. Yes, by anyone's standard, judgment, or measure, Alan K. Simpson was a national treasure. As I said, I want to end with Al's own words. I had the honor of being in the audience when he gave one of his last speeches that was packed full of reflections and wisdom. Al said, and I quote, "To laugh is to risk appearing a fool. To weep is to risk appearing sentimental. To reach out for another is to risk involvement. To expose feelings is to risk rejection. To place your dreams before the crowd is to risk ridicule. To love is to risk not being loved in return. To go forward in the face of overwhelming odds is to risk failure. But risks must be taken, because the greatest hazard in life is to risk nothing. The person who risks nothing, does nothing, has nothing, is nothing. He may avoid suffering and sorrow, but he cannot learn, feel, change, grow, or love. Only a person who takes risks is free." And Al closed his speech with these words, words we should all remember as we remember the great Al Simpson. We should be slow to judge others, swift to defend the weak, steady in our resolve to combat evil, and be ready at all times and places to speak well of a pretty damn fine experiment, America. Thank you, Al, for a life well lived. May God bless you, and may God bless the America you love so much. We love you, Al.
So Al greatly admired her values. Those who worked so closely with Al in his political world often noted that Al was awed by how smart she was in so many areas: ranching, energy, finances, budget, cryptocurrency. Wyoming U.S. Senator Cynthia Lummis.
Thank you, Ben. Dear friends, good afternoon. In a family blessed with extraordinary talent, tremendous intellect, unique skills, the angels left the spigot on and left the room, and it overflowed when God unleashed Alan K. Simpson on this world. You know, my husband's name was also Al. But when my Al was alive and someone would call him Big Al, Al Wiederspan would correct them. He'd say, "I'm Little Al. There's only one Big Al. That's Al Simpson." Al Simpson befriended presidents and kings, ball players and popes, saints, sinners and saints, everyone from Clarence Thomas to Ted Koppel. I'm told that Ted Koppel would visit Cody to interview Al Simpson. And when you'd see on television the camera focused on Al Simpson and Ted Koppel's back, you'd see these shoulders bouncing up and down during the interview. Ted Koppel was friend and frenemy, like so many, beloved. There's really only one person that can walk in Al's footprints, and of course, that is Anne Schroll Simpson of Graybull. Anne has always been the Cher to his Sonny, the Gracie to his Benny, the wickedly smart, straight woman to the brilliant, comedic world leader. I once accompanied Al and Anne to a lovely brunch in a gorgeous home in Washington, D.C. We walked in the door, and there was a priceless work of art hanging over the mantel. And as Erskine Bowles said, Al Simpson and Anne, those cute kids from Cody, are truly Renaissance people. Al looked at that painting and said, "Annie, that's a real pisseroo hanging up there." And Anne smiled and said, "As you know, Al, that's an original Pizarro hanging there." All of us in Wyoming have been blessed that this family, the Simpson family, would share its beloved world figure and Wyoming treasure with us. And that's a sacrifice. We know it. I know it. Both Al and Anne would be the first to remind us that even in grief, there is joy and gratitude. So I want to thank the whole Simpson family, Anne, Bill, Colin, Sue, Pete, all of you, for sharing Big Al with us. Romans 8:28 says, "And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose." I believe that Al Simpson was called according to God's purpose. With his love, his humor, his cowboy countenance, his spirit, Al Simpson changed the world. And as Al Simpson would say, and so it is, and so it will be. Happy trails to you, Al Simpson, until we meet again.
He was one of Al's closest aides in the U.S. Senate. He served as general counsel in Al's GOP whip office. Al wrote an inscription in a book to Mike that says, "Without you, I could never have succeeded in my role as Republican Senate whip. You gave me your all: loyalty, wisdom, patience. Representing hundreds of Al's former Senate staff members today is Mike Tonger.
Thank you, Ben. An administrative matter before I start. I think an earlier version of the program might have indicated that I was Chief of Staff. That was actually Don Hardy, who later wrote Al's biography. And before him, Vietnam War hero J.O. Ratliff, both loyal sons of Cody, Wyoming. It's such an honor to be here today with this distinguished group to eulogize Al Simpson. I loved him like a father. I was his chief counsel when he was whip. When people used to ask me what that meant, I would say, I'm a key advisor to a guy who doesn't take key advice. Today, it's my special privilege to express the admiration and love of hundreds of staffers who worked for Al and Ann, because they were always a team, over the span of 18 years. Over the last few weeks, our staff family has been sharing stories about our time with Al. We feel it was such a blessing to have had that opportunity to work for him, and we will treasure those memories forever, and we will certainly keep them alive. We worked hard, but the rewards were laughter, warmth, a stimulating environment, the Simpsons' loyalty to us and ours to them. Al brought out the very best in each of us. We never wanted to disappoint him. DC media at the time called him the most popular senator. There's a lot of turnover in a lot of congressional office, but not in ours. We didn't want to leave. We were the envy of other Senate offices. I wasn't the only staffer who loved Al and Ann like parents. There were many of us. They made each of us feel unique and valued. I won't highlight the contributions of just some staff, because Al would be horrified if I left somebody out. But Al loved us, appreciated our work and loyalty, and would want us to remember that. Al would compare himself to Jacob from the Bible, who, according to Scripture, often needed to lean on his staff. I want to add something here. I know that there's staffers in the audience. I know that there's hundreds of staffers watching on Wyoming PBS and maybe C-SPAN. But if you don't mind, Al would want you to know how much you were appreciated to him. If you could just stand up for just a moment and be recognized for your loyalty and service. Thank you. Thank you all. Al didn't know me when I interviewed for the opening in his whip office, yet he gave me the opportunity of a lifetime. He took a little extra time, and he saw something in me. From that point forward, from the late 1980s until a few weeks ago when I had the chance to visit with him, tell him I loved him, and to say goodbye, the close relationship I had with Al has been the honor of my life. I always got asked, what's it like to work for Al? I'd say it's wonderful. I get paid and I laugh a lot all day. Just when you all thought you hadn't heard any fresh Simpson material lately, let me channel a bit from a memo I just found that hasn't seen the light of day for 35 years. The context? Al allowed us a front row seat to the major issues of the day confronting Senate leadership. He made sure we knew how to best help him do an effective job in matters both national and of personal importance. To do that, he provided us directives through dictated memos like this one, dated January 1990. An administrative note of intimate detail. The bung fodder, also known as toilet paper, in my Capitol office is industrial strength. Fine-grained sandpaper. Is there anyone in the government that uses Charmin or other soft, delightful tissues? If not, then please buy me some. I'll pay cash money out of my own pocket. Please get me some of that new stuff, I don't use it much in here, but boy, when I do, I don't need that stuff hanging on the wall. Al could be prickly, but that was always temporary, evaporating like water on a hot sidewalk in the summer, especially after Anne provided her guidance. At his core was the purest of hearts, a love of people, an abiding curiosity, the best sense of humor, comedic delivery ever. He saw people as they are, with flaws, talents, vulnerabilities, just like he had. Like our first meeting, he took extra time to find out about a person, not just to be transactional, but to learn and to truly listen to their unique story. I once heard a senator say, "I didn't come here to be liked. I came here to get things done." Well, Al would have never said that. He wanted to share his big heart and humor with you from the outset. He would take the time with no motives besides friendship to learn about you, including your kids, your spouse, your interests, your goals, etc. He was sincere and authentic. And as has been mentioned before, he would drain the person he was with of all pretenses. You were important to him, and he disarmed you with his humor and his humanity. Presidents, senators, authors, movie stars, restaurant waitstaff, students, staffers, custodians, and everyday people alike loved him. When you are beloved, you are trusted. When you're trusted, people, including senators, are more likely to work constructively with you. That was the way he approached his work in the Senate and in life, and with that, he achieved great results. It was the ever-present magic that Al had, which we, as his staff, so loved and admired. Like Will Rogers and Mark Twain, he was a keen and humorous observer of humanity, especially the institution of government. His last full year in the Senate was nearly 30 years ago, yet he was regularly asked by the media and policymakers for his opinions and comments on the current political situation. I don't think we can name another retired senator who is in such demand for so long. After the Senate, he accomplished great things which other eulogists have already recounted. But he was a Renaissance man, an athlete, a veteran, a lover of the arts, music, books, sports. He was a devoted, adoring husband to the remarkable Anne for over 70 years. He was a great and loving father, brother, grandfather, and was always a great friend. He brought people together and encouraged marriages, including my own. He had a zest for life and a joy which was contagious. Al was asked once for one word that would describe himself. He said, curious. Now, can you imagine curious and loving Al now in heaven? We have faith that heaven's the kind of place where we might reconnect with loved ones and with others who've gone before. Now, can you imagine Al in heaven sharing laughs and stories with Bill Cody, Will Rogers, Mark Twain, or how much he will love reconnecting with family like Millward and Lorna, and friends like George and Barbara Bush, David McCullough, Norm Mineta, Kurt Gowdy, Ed Hirschler, Bob Dole, Mike Enzi, Craig Thomas, Bob Dornan, Larry Berleffi, and so many others from Wyoming, from all over the country and from all over the world. Maybe he'll meet some new friends like his boyhood heroes on the Detroit Tigers, or Albert Bierstadt, or Frederick Remington, or Abe Lincoln, or the guy he liked to quote so often, William Shakespeare. With apologies to Judge Bort, Al really is going to have an intellectual feast. So let's think about that, smile, and be happy for Al. When I was in my first few months working for Al, my mother, who wasn't politically active but had a lot of depth, asked me what I thought at the time was a simplistic question. But at its core, it really captured so much. She asked, is Senator Simpson a good man? I responded somewhat dismissively, yes, of course. But what I should have said, and what I've come to know with clarity over 37 years, is yes, Mom, in fact, he is the very best. In closing, especially now when our country is so polarized, we should remember Al by trying to be a bit more like him. Believe in the inherent goodness of people. Have more compassion for the disadvantaged and marginalized in society. Believe in redemption. Give people a second chance. Lead with warmth, love, and humor. Take extra time to get to really know a person. Nurture your friendships. Be loyal. Take your work seriously, but not yourself. And finally, and consistent with that, always remember this important Al Simpson admonition. Never kick a fresh turd around on a hot day. God bless you, lovable, curious, hilarious Al. On behalf of your staff, we love you, will always remember you, and will try to be more like you. Thank you.
Al and Ann share a lifetime friendship with the Cheney family. Always loved hearing their hilarious stories, all told about their early Wyoming campaigning days. Representing the Cheney family today is Liz Cheney. In a recent interview, Al is quoted as saying, "Liz is brilliant. She loves America. And I can assure you she is no Wanda Wallflower. She is one substantial human being, former Wyoming U.S. Congresswoman Liz Cheney."
Wow. You know, it's, to begin, it seems obvious to talk about the decades of friendship and the connections between our families. But in a way, that seems insufficient because you are family. And I was thinking last night as I was listening to all of you, but especially the wonderful grandchildren. You know, when my grandmother, Cheney, died many years ago, the minister said to Mary and me that the closest thing on earth to God's love is the love of a grandparent. And I hope you all know that. My God, what incredible grandparents you're blessed with. And I only could think last night sitting there, what a legacy, what a blessing, what an incredibly special thing that we all got to know Al, that we've all gotten to know Ann. And Ann and Al both have lived life right. You know, I don't really remember a time when Al and Ann Simpson were not in my life. The relationship really does go back 60 years. It goes back to 1965 when Al Simpson was a brand new legislator and Dick Cheney was an intern. He was a University of Wyoming political scientist. And I think it may not be true that Al's the only C student to have a building named after him here at Laramie, but I got to go check on that. But after their time together in Cheyenne, and Al had risen to be Speaker Pro Tem of the legislature of the State House, and my dad had gone to Washington, we came back. It was 1977, and Cliff Hansen announced that he was not going to be running for re-election. So my dad got in his car in Casper and drove to Cheyenne to seek the counsel of former Wyoming Governor Stan Hathaway. And he said to him, you know, I'm thinking of running for the Senate seat that Cliff Hansen is retiring from. And Stan said to my dad, well, you know, you could do that, but of course Al Simpson's going to kick your butt. Which gave my dad pause, wisely. He didn't jump into that race, but a few months later, when our Congressman Tino Roncalio announced that he wasn't going to be running, my dad decided that race might in fact be a lot more appealing. And that began the wonderful, amazing 1978 campaign where Al Simpson and Dick Cheney, it really was the Al Simpson and Dick Cheney roadshow all across Wyoming. People ask me about my experiences campaigning That one was a family affair. We traveled the state together, and we listened to Al Simpson and Dick Cheney tell stories in every town, and every truck stop, every county fair, every parade, all across the state. And what an education that was. They usually kept their stories G-rated, but I will tell you, I will never forget the first time that I watched Al. He was dealing with somebody in the audience who was being a little challenging. It was a gentleman who happened to have a full head of hair. And Al looked out in the audience at this guy and he said, you know, each one of us is only given a limited number of hormones. And if you choose to use yours to grow hair, that's up to you. Now, my sister and I were like 8 and 10 at the time, and we noodled on that one for several days trying to decipher it. But that election led to Al and my dad joining Malcolm Wallop in Washington as Wyoming's congressional delegation. I am biased, but having been a member of our congressional delegation, I think I can say that was the golden era of Wyoming representation in so many ways. They were 3 serious people who cared deeply about our country. We all know Al's humor and his warmth and his love, but he also was a huge intellectual, somebody who spent time thinking about the issues that matter and how we should handle those. And the 3 of them believed that the voters of this state deserved the truth. They accomplished much, and they had a great time doing it. Now, Al and my dad took their roadshow national in 2000 when Al joined us on the vice presidential campaign. He came out on the road with us many times, and he was a joy to campaign with. So long as you understood, Al would do whatever you asked. He would go wherever you wanted, but he was always going to say exactly what he wanted to say. Now, as you all probably know, presidential campaigns are pretty tightly scripted events. You know, there are key issues that you're trying to get the press to cover every day, and some you would rather the press not cover. Al was with us on a particularly memorable campaign swing through Nevada. Now, one of the hottest political issues of the day was whether or not the nation was going to store nuclear waste at Yucca Mountain. This was such a sensitive issue that campaign headquarters in Austin had sent talking points and had said to my dad, you need to really stick to these talking points if you get asked about nuclear waste at Yucca Mountain. Now, the talking points were completely unhelpful. They were something along the lines of, President Bush is going to consider all options and do what's best. Now, basically this idea was, you know, get in, get out, move on, hope nobody gets hurt. So the staff gathered the press, the local press, at one of our stops. Al and my dad came in for the press conference, and sure enough, the first and the second and the third questions were all about, is nuclear waste coming here to Yucca Mountain? My dad very dutifully deployed the talking points each time, while Al sat and watched this all unfold. Now, Al was not scheduled to speak, mind you. But after the third go-round, Al couldn't take it anymore. For God's sake, he said, the nuclear waste is definitely coming here, and you all just need to get used to it. Now, this wasn't the talking points. So there was dead silence in the room. Nobody knew what to do. Reporters are scribbling what Al Simpson has just announced, and we all looked over at the campaign staffer, the young man who was supposed to be managing Al that day. And just as we all looked over at him, he stood up, turned around, and sprinted out of the room. Now, I've never seen anybody move quite that fast, and to his credit, he recognized this was something of an emergency and he needed guidance from headquarters stat. That campaign aide is a wonderful guy who actually has a very important job today. He's now the head of global affairs for Facebook. So if you ever run into Joel Kaplan, ask him about Al Simpson and Yucca Mountain. You probably will see the color drain from his face. But Al Simpson's reach is very long. And by the way, Bush Cheney won Nevada pretty handily that year. But of all of the politicians who came out on the campaign trail with us, and there were many, Al was very special. He would come up to the front of the plane and he would talk to the big wigs in the front of the plane about policy and strategy. But then he would go to the back of the plane where the people who really ran things were, where the campaign staff hung out. And he would shoot the breeze with them and give them life lessons, and they loved it. And by the end of the campaign, that part of the plane was decorated with photos that they had taken all on the campaign trail, things that we had seen and done. Now, of all of the politicians who traveled with us in that campaign, not a single one got a place of honor on the wall of photos on the plane, except for Al Simpson. He took a picture with the staff, and it was proudly displayed right next to the photo of the cow made entirely of butter we'd seen in Wisconsin. And Al was very proud of this. We all loved Al so much. He was always there at the other end of the phone with sage advice mixed in with great humor. At one point, when I was talking to Al about the differences between the House and the Senate, he gave me this self-deprecating pearl of wisdom. The thing you have to know, Liz, about the seniority system in the United States Senate is it's just like a cesspool, and the biggest turds rise to the top. This is sorry. He said it with love. But with all of Al's tremendous humor and warmth, he never stopped fighting for the truth and for what's right. He could easily have stepped away, decided that he'd made his contribution, and he certainly had, and he had earned the rest, but he never did. Al knew that silence was complicity, and he showed all of us what it means to carry out the duty that we have as citizens, to defend this country and the Constitution that we love. When Al first announced his run for the Senate all those years ago, he promised two things to the people of Wyoming. He said he would work very hard and he would try his best to make us very proud. Well, my friend, you did that, and so much more. Godspeed, Al Simpson. We love you and your wonderful family. What a man, what a life. Thank you.
Al always referred to politics as a contact sport, and he stated often his admiration for those like Harriet Hageman, who are so willing to step into this arena. The Simpson family has expressed their deep appreciation for Congresswoman Hageman's praise for Al's decades of public service and his desire to make our country a better place. Wyoming Congresswoman Harriet Hageman.
Good afternoon. It is such a pleasure to be with you all today and to pay honor and tribute to Senator Simpson. There is so much to glean from those who have gone before us, and that is especially the case with regard to Senator Simpson. My father, Jim Hageman, used to say, public service is uplifting, self-service is not. Senator Simpson's life, like that of my father before him, and with his wife ever beside him, lived a life marked by public service, uplifting the lives of so many. Anyone with a connection to Wyoming politics or philanthropy knows Al Simpson. Even though he finished his service as United States Senator nearly 3 decades ago, he and Ann were constants at Lincoln and Reagan Day dinners, fundraisers, and meetings of all kinds. Wyoming's political landscape is like that of any great movement historically. Change is often made as a result of those very few who are willing to act. For many, many years, Al and Ann Simpson have led a cohort of that very few, who have made themselves available to step up and give their all to impact both our state, the country, and the world. Not only did Senator Simpson lead a life of service, but he always remained sensible, employing a practical outlook on the needs held by Wyoming and the best way to solve them. Marked more recently by his work done to rein in government waste. He didn't shy away from big problems, but chipped away at them one step at a time until he reached a solution. Finally, I will always admire Senator Simpson for his sincerity. Whether his beliefs were vogue or in the minority, he stood strong for them and was relentless in their pursuit. His sincerity to individuals and to the causes for which he fought is an achievement for him and an example for all of us. Senator Simpson was one of Wyoming's leading citizens, a globally respected statesman for his leadership and his character, and a man who had great love for his state. All of Wyoming pauses today to mourn a man towering both in stature and a unique ability to lead. May we also pick up where he left off and continue to carry the torch of all things Wyoming and of sincere service to our fellow man. Thank you.
Pete Simpson, Colin, as we come toward the end and wrapping things up, one of God's greatest gifts to Wyoming, the Simpson brothers. When God presented them into our world 13 months apart, God's world would never be the same. And God loved it. God knew his world needed two brothers who would help countless others see that each day can be the best. Leadership matters, integrity is forever, and laughter is the key to living forever. Al called his brother the dearest friend of my lifetime. He is priceless to all of us. Pete Simpson.
Which, of course, brings me to another Al Simpson. He always said, I hate when people stand up. So many escape. Well, this has been absolutely wonderful. Absolutely long, but absolutely wonderful. So thank you. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for being a part of this. It's great to see so many who loved him and so many we love, all in one big, massive group here at the university that he loved. Al would be pleased to be here. He would love it. He would also be astonished at how many of the professorate might be here, because as someone said before, his claim to academic fame was simply, I didn't graduate cum laude, I graduated thank the laude, which of course replied to his C grades and all the rest of it, and mine too. But it was here where he found Anne. He found himself, and he found Anne, this beautiful Schroll girl from Grable, Wyoming. She was every fellow's ideal on the campus. Everybody just thought, what a gal. She could be a model, a movie star, the rest of it. So when my brother came up to me and said, Pete, I'm going to marry Anne Schroll, I said, what? he never really got over that remark. He said, that's not the kind of thing you want to hear from somebody who's supposed to be your best friend and your great supporter. But he lucked out, and so did we all, the family and this place and Al's career, because that partnership is what propelled Al's career and undergirded his life and legacy. UW is a testing ground for Al as well. I got to do a quick story about Ann. Those, you know, back in Washington, you had to go to some very sophisticated events, and they're not always people with less pretension. There are plenty who might be just plain snobby. Well, one gal comes up to Ann at a very fancy party, a cocktail arrangement, lobbyists and all, and said, you come from Wyoming. Where did you prep? Where did you prep? And Ann said, Grable High School, home of the Grable Buffaloes. When Al was tested here, his common sense, the things you've heard from these great friends and people here on the stage and in the audience, they liked his style, they liked his easy way, and they loved his legendary humor. They felt comfortable in his presence even back then, and so when he ran for student senate, he won by a landslide. And one of the comments that I heard then and have heard since was from a good friend of mine who worked for a Democratic Party, and he was a college student at the same time. He says, you know, I don't agree with 3/4 of the things that he says, but I trust him. But I trust him. Well, he became known on this campus in my time and his as Big Al. Why not? He was huge by that time, and so the old phrase has been used here before when he claimed I was back when I had hair, weighed 250, and thought beer was food. That applied. It was quite true. He made the team, the football team, and in his senior year, he was a starter. And the thing that amazed me the first time that I was out for basketball at that time, that's another story. But when he was on the bench, and we knew that he was maybe going to play in his junior year, a yell went up it was largely from a bunch of rapscallion fraternity members, but still, and it said, "We want Big Al." And then it went all the way around the stadium. "We want Big Al." God, he was being voted for right then. It was stunning to me, startling to me, and I've never forgotten. It made me think this guy has some very special qualities. After all the years we've been living together in the same doggone bedroom, and finally had to get 7-foot beds, and he's got something special. And he considered that a great part of his life was not just touched by the great relationships we had at home with our parents, but with this university. He considered this university the touchstone for the career that he finally was able to make. And it was a part of this place that he decided he would always try to give back. And it's been recited here. President of the Alumni Association, the campaign chairman for a $200 million all-time high distinction campaign, and powerful legislator from Cheyenne who knew and loved the university and represented what it needed, like adequate funding. How am I doing, Ed? He was such a supporter, such a man of this place. And there are many stories that I could tell him if I started doing that. You might not get home until next week. But the thing that I particularly wanted to mention is he was kind of Lincoln-esque in his posture, his stature, his demeanor, his humor, the stories he told, his small-town lawyer, common sense, good wit, and good sense, his insights, his ways of looking at things in a compassionate manner, and from the other side of the fence, and the other party. Those things didn't count as much as humanity did. And his way of thinking was, you have to be the human being you want to be, and you have to work at that. And this was a place he considered his growing up place to work at that particular goal. I'm actually going to close. This is astounding, but I will. Because when I mention his Lincoln-esque qualities, that's strange that when he walked on the stage, the public stage, when he first started this game that he was in, it was the press and the TV announcers and others who began to use the phrase Lincoln-esque. So I picked something out by A.P. Markham about Abe Lincoln. And by the way, Al would be the absolute last person to have himself compared by his brother or not with Abe Lincoln. You know, come on, what are you doing? Anyhow, you can't stop me, Al. So the poem that he wrote about Lincoln's passing, mostly, I've committed it to memory, was simply a line. He said, when he went, like a lordly cedar on the hill, he went down with a great shout and left a lonesome place against the sky. Goodbye, Big Al. I hate it, but I love you. Okay.
Pete? I love you. I love you, my friend. Thank you. How do you close a program of this magnitude? How do you bestow the ultimate honor Al Ken received today? The only voice to close is the singular voice of his children. Bill, Colin, and Sue. Ladies and gentlemen, Colin Simpson.
Good evening. Oh, no, good afternoon. This is what Dad did first. Pull up his pants. Wow. I will never be the 14th speaker of 14 speakers again. But Ben Blaylock, thank you so much. Incredible job. Thank you. Not only for this event, but what you did for the university over the years. I mean, I can go down the line, and I'm not going to. But I wanted to thank Ben and Mary Ivanoff. Where is Mary? Mary. I don't know how you pull this off. Well, I do know how you pull it off because you're a professional at it and you've done it before. And thank you so much. It's an incredible event. And Cody Gortmaker with the Ballard Funeral Home in Cody. If you've seen the big, tall Al Simpson looking guy around, he's taken such great care of this casket and Dad that we're just eternally grateful. So I wanted to start, fellow candidates, old and new, but that was the wrong speech. And Phil, I did want to just add in there that I have this written down, that the jackass at the Kentucky Derby, the end of that is, he knew he couldn't win, but he certainly enjoyed the company. So. Oh, I'm so proud to be here today on behalf of the family. Well, Pete is on behalf of the family as well, but I'm so proud of the family and what we've experienced with Dad and his transition over the last months. Has been a very powerful experience, and I love you all. I stand before you today full of gratitude for the life of our father, our rock, our inspiration, and our legacy. On behalf of the entire family, I extend much love and appreciation to today's speakers for their beautiful words about Mom and Dad and their accomplishments. Words that spring from many years and generations of friendship. Dad was all about words and their impact, and you done him proud, as you heard him say. I also extend our deepest gratitude and respect to the wonderful doctors, nurses, CNAs, aides, staff, who so compassionately and selflessly gave of themselves that Dad might heal, be comforted, and find peace. Thank you so much. You are angels on earth. And we thank those who have sent expressions of condolence, sympathy, love, and remembrance. Beautiful words that we can tell from reading them were the most important words they wanted to say. Thank you so much. I first met Al Simpson when he came to my incubator in March of 1958. I was 5 weeks premature. Much like my mother, I'm impatient and it's hard for me to sit too long. But Dad, he was mostly very deliberate and thoughtful. I say mostly because if Mom would say, he's a wonderful husband, except when he's not. Right? That was a famous family saying. Mom, our incredible mother, our Grable girl. Words cannot describe the impact you have had on our lives, the whole family. Mom lost her father, Ivan Schroll, when she was 15. And she and her mother, Pansy, and her twin sister, Nan, and their brother, Rob, moved here to Laramie. She grew up much differently from Dad, with much less privilege. But she too was enveloped in love, and her father's death forced her to become self-sufficient and strong. Her wonderful qualities and strong character guided she and Dad's lives together in the most positive way. Mom, your character, beauty, grace, intelligence, and practical nature make you equal to Dad in every way. It is true he's severely overmarried, and he did rely on you greatly and loved you dearly. You pulled him through very difficult times, and today, Mom, we honor your commitment to Dad and the family. You are the very best. Mom rode along for many of Dad's speeches and heard his oft-repeated jokes, and you heard about how she would clear her throat. And so loud enough so Dad could hear it, and many people in the room, and he called it the dog whistle, and it was quite effective. And it was, if he was going on too long or speaking about something, she had told him, Al, stop saying that. But that was great. And Dad would sometimes be asked, what is your wife's name? And he would say, long suffering. Back to Dad. He would sit for hours dictating, editing, and re-editing his letters and speeches, Simpsonizing letters of recommendation, reading about sports, art, history, poetry, humor, and so many other things that occupied his agile mind. He loved language and books, and among his favorites were Kipling, Shakespeare, Robert Service. He never met a document he could not edit. Lyrical profanity was his friend. Beautiful iteration of thought was his gift. The perfect choice of words. He was so good at it. He would come up with things, and I'd think to myself, well, that's how it should be said. I've been rifling through his files. Dad would call it rifling through. Get out of my stuff. It's a museum of his life at home. Incredible photos, books, binders, and Dad's stuff. Things that scratched his funny bone, tugged at his heart, piqued his intellect, recalled to life event, or made him ponder the mysteries of life. He kept files for everything. For instance, Simpson, doggerel and songs, MLS and tribe, or sayings and stuff, AKS gatherings. And here are a few of the gems that I pulled out of there. And miraculously, after the 14th speaker, there is still more. I do know that at my funeral, the 14th person will go, that's it, folks. I don't know. But, okay. Nobody's perfect except you and me. You and I. He has all the virtues I dislike and none of the vices I admire. Winston Churchill. I have never killed a man, but I've read many obituaries with great pleasure. Clarence Darrow. He is not only dull himself, but he is the cause of dullness in others. Samuel Johnson. I feel more like I do now than when I came. Al Simpson. When the chips are down, are the buffalo empty? And Dad would say, think about that one. And a very important one to remember is if you're damned if you do, and damned if you don't, then do. Dad had great faith in God, and he was a faithful servant and member of the Christ Church in Cody. And there's the idyllic picture of Pete and Dad staged in front of the window, looking like the angelic acolytes that they were not. His dad's grace at meals were wonderful, and later in his life, legendary in their breadth. It's a family inside joke. But, he did a speech to the Senate prayer breakfast, and I don't know the date, I think it was in the late 90s, that is really a stirring, powerful confessional by Dad. It's really amazing. And this was a prayer he enjoyed. Dear Lord, so far today, Lord, I have done all right. I haven't gossiped, haven't lost my temper, and haven't been overindulgent, selfish, greedy, grumpy, or nasty. I'm very thankful for that. But in a few minutes, Lord, I'm going to get out of bed, and from then on, I'm probably going to need a lot more help. Amen. Here's another one. To do something, get at it. That was Al. Reading was a great pastime for Dad. Daily, Mom and Dad would read vast amounts of things. Mail, newspapers, magazines, periodicals. They read everything from the Grable Standard to the New York Times, from the Basin Republican the Lusk Herald to the Washington Post and the Economist. They read everything. But Dad didn't just read things. He tore pages out, he cut things out, he wrote on them with his trusty black felt tip pen, which many of you may have photos that he wrote on, and disseminated them to his family like, Ann, read this, Ann, read and toss, Ann, get to Colin, Bill, do what you want with this, TGO. TGO, the Great Oz. That was Dad. Okay. He loved competition, the scrap of politics, and he loved to say that the difference between a horse race and a political race is that in a horse race, the entire horse runs. Dad loved being part of a team, and Brother Pete was his captain for the first 22 years of his life. What an incredible bond. But he so loved this university, and my God, how he loved this place, and its role in his life and his parents and his brothers and that of the Simpson family. And thank you, the University of Wyoming, President Seidel, for all the incredible gifts that you've given us this weekend. You've heard about all the 260 in here with food, or whatever. He had hair, thought beer was food. But he was known, but the rest of that is, I played some football and basketball for the Cowboys. In basketball, I was listed in the statistical column as others. I was known as Others Simpson. And he had a clipping from the 1961 column of Larry Berlafia, the great sportscaster and a sports writer from Cheyenne, that he wrote about how he'd met with Kenny Sailors, God rest his soul, Al Simpson, Dick Haig, and they were talking about Ev Shelton's team when they were playing. They needed a win over Montana at Missoula for the Skyline title. And Dad was the 12th man of a 12-man squad. And 4 of the starters had fouled out, and Ev turned to Dad and said, "Well, young man, I'm too old to play. So get in there, but whatever you do, don't shoot." Well, Wyoming was leading by 3 points at that time, and a few seconds later, Dad found himself under the bucket. So what did he do? He made a bucket. And the Cowboys won by 5. The ball hung for a lifetime on the edge of the hoop and finally sank through with what proved to be the winning margin. After the game, Coach Shelton said, "Al, you scared the devil out of me on that one." "Never in doubt," Al said. "In fact, I started to hook it in just for laughs." I found the box score, but Dad loved to reminisce about his Cowboy football and basketball days and the many great men he came to know and love all his life, including General Charlie Wing right here. Charlie, thank you so much. It's great to have you here with us. And I think he scored 13 points in that game, if I remember the box score. He was a great basketball player. Dad would say, you've heard this many times, "Have you lived in Wyoming all your life?" "Not yet." But traveling with Dad around Wyoming was a travelogue of memories. He had stories about darn near every pull-out, bar, historical marker in town we passed. He loved to say, we'd go by Hellstaff Acre, and he'd go, "Reminds me of the one," we'd go, "You know, this would be a good town if you got some good people and some water." And the guy turned to him and said, "Well, that's all hell needs." Dad was a compulsive joke teller, and he was a master at it. He loved the goofy and the absurd. He loved to make people laugh at him and with him. He had great comedic timing and a near photographic memory. He never forgot a joke. I couldn't believe it. His stories and jokes will live on because, as Dad said, there's no such thing as repetition. He had sheets of punchlines. We're trying to recreate some of the jokes, but we'll spend considerable time doing that, and we will be limited in the release because of the limited audience that can be shared with some of them. He was a ruby in the dung, as he loved to say. Over the last few weeks, I've read with pride many of Dad's speeches, and the one he was most proud of, but the accomplishment he was most proud of was the law school renaming. But the speech he was most proud of was the eulogy for President George Bush, and he received a wonderful gift from the Bush family, and he delivered for his friend. And I plagiarized a bit of it, but the punchline for Alan K. Simpson is this: you would have wanted him on your side. He never lost his sense of humor. Humor is the universal solvent against the abrasive elements of life. He never hated anyone. He knew what his mother and my mother always knew. Hatred corrodes the container it's carried in. The most decent and honorable person I ever met was my father, Al Simpson. One of man's noblemen. His epitaph, perhaps just a single letter, the letter L for loyalty. It coursed through his blood. Loyalty to his country, loyalty to his family, loyalty to his friends, loyalty to the institutions of government and this university, and always, always a friend to his friends. Great men. He was wonderful company. No matter what context and no matter what the hours, he had a favorite place to eat or drink the world over, and he didn't just know the name of the maitre d' or the waiter or the janitor or the security guard or the owner. He knew them all. And he remembered some detail about them in amazing detail that made them feel special. But what was Dad's life's work? To me, it was communicating, talking with people, writing letters, calling people in extremis, consoling, learning, encouraging, teaching, helping others see the best in themselves. His letters were so special. I can't tell you the number of people I've met over decades that come up to me and say, my son, my daughter, my mother, my father got a letter from your father about an accomplishment, a loss of a family member that was so touching to them. And it was really incredible. And what a legacy to have. He reached out easily in difficult circumstances, and that's a gift. Dad loved life and had incredible adventures. He threw snowballs off the White House roof with President Bush. He had memorable dinners with President Reagan, and he used to say to us kids, "It's a great day for the race." And we'd say, "What race?" And he'd say, "The human race." You know, I was thinking, what characters contributed to Dad's character? Well, Bill Simpson, who fought against the expansion of Grand Teton National Park. His father, Millward, who as governor commuted a death sentence of a confessed killer, shut down gambling in Jackson Hole, had a row with the highway department about where I-25 would end. It goes on and on. So that, on that foundation, that heritage gave Dad that foundation and a tough hide. But what made him special? He was a self-made man, thus saving God from an awesome responsibility. That was one of Dad's favorites, too. Many people say he was authentic and genuine. Many people say he changed their life. Many people say he influenced them in a direction they did not believe they could go. What does it take? Dad showed us the way. Listening, hearing, caring, love, forgiveness, acceptance, honesty, sharing personal faults, humanizing himself, and always having humor at hand to put someone at ease. He understood that the privilege he had been afforded did not make him better than anyone else, and he worked hard to show people that he did not believe he was better than them. I know he felt different and insecure in ways few ever understood. And he developed an incredible capacity to want to know and understand each person at their own level. He was full of grace for his fellow humans who tread this mortal coil. Dad was never going to be done with life or politics. He frequently joked that the only way he would get politics out of his systems was with embalming fluid. It's hard for all of us, and obviously many of you, to reconcile that someone so much larger than life and so full of life is no longer with us. But his good works live on in all of us, in his thousands of good deeds, in his thousands of friends, and in his thousands of letters. he will be well remembered. And up there, tall guy's bent over a crowd telling his favorite jokes, and he's smiling. And as he would love to say, as Tiny Tim would say, God bless us, everyone. Thank you.
So, Anne, in closing today, all of our thoughts, prayers, and love turn to you. And before you clear your throat for me, I just want to say thank you. You and Al have touched my soul, and God changed the course of my life through your gifts of love and support from me. I owe you everything. I love you forever. At this time, we're going to have military funeral honors. Veterans and current military members may render the hand salute, even though you may not be in uniform. Let me ask all of our guests to stand for the playing of taps. as we close the day, you can remain standing. We felt the only way to bring all this home was Al and Pete. Please direct your attention to the video screens as the Simpson brothers sing their mother's song.
Okay. From the mountains of Wyoming and across the sagebrush plain, come the cowboys fighting, charging, piling gain on gain. So cheer for old Wyoming, alma mater of renown. Touchdown, 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 for the gold and the brown. Come on, Wyoming, we've got to fight today, for we want a victory. Come on, Wyoming, you've got to win today, for the university. Come on, Wyoming, we all depend on you. We are loyal through and through. Powder River, Letterbuck, Wyoming. That was a couple of gorgeous, more than muffled applause this time, actual heart patting.
God bless